All right, and folks, click the links for Odyssey, Bit Chute, join the Telegram. I guess you can join the Twitter, follow me on Twitter for as long as I'm going to be on there. I'm just trolling on Twitter nonstop, so I'm probably not going to be on there too much longer before they delete account number, 7 or something. Or support channel through various other means. So everything is crap and getting worse. I feel like you could go through Bounty in a Comics front page and just keep scrolling. You're like, oh, yeah, if you just kind of keep that in mind, everything is crap. It's as if they're doing this stuff on purpose. How can we make things as lame as possible? They're just chalk another line. And it's like, oh, I've got an idea. This will really drive the Chads crazy. Is it possible they're not watching the show? Shows like Star Trek at this point are a very small segment of the population. It's got, it's one of the shows got a small loyal fan base, and they're going to watch anything that comes up on screen. Like if you haven't dipped out by now, I don't think anything will scare you away. So everything is crap. Hippopotamus stars in Star Trek. The people who care, like they keep, it's like these people are mad at their dads or something. We're going to outrage these people. We're going to outrage the people who don't buy our comics or watch our shows or go to our movies. You're not really outraging them because they're just like what was that Matrix Part 4 that came out? It completely bombed. Nobody saw it. Even the diehard, maybe some diehard people went to the theater and saw it. But like other than that, you can just go watch it on Odyssey. You didn't subvert expectations. Nobody watched it because the people who watch The Matrix and Star Wars and Star Trek are also aware of social media. They know which way the wind is blowing. And by now, you have to know everything is dog shit. Everything coming out now, everything in the mainstream is going to be unwatchably bad. I think the only thing you could possibly focus on now would be stuff like Comicsgate, small independent people putting out their own stories. It's better to support something kind of rough and in the early stages than stuff that is going to be bad. You're not subverting expectations, but sir, we are expecting it to be dog shit. And that's what you're giving us. In fact, dog poop. Oh, so we just kind of, I guess we're not really subverting expectations. So what are we doing? I don't know, cultural Marxism, I guess. But it's like, brainwashing people really works better when they don't know they're being brainwashed. When you're so on the nose with everything, every single time, it's like it gets a little obvious. So Star Trek, in case, I don't know how you would not know what Star Trek is, it was a show from the 60s, I think it was 64 to 69, I didn't realize it was such a short-run series, that had, the sets were styrofoam gray rocks that never seemed to follow physics because they're made of styrofoam. Obviously, you can't use weighted rocks. And they had walls that were made of, cardboard or, papered over plywood type of stuff. And in low budget movies, they have people, when they pretend to back up against the wall, they're very careful not to touch the wall because the wall will shake because it's just plywood. And they had the sets that were, like they probably filmed in the Southern California desert somewhere watching out for rattlesnake. Oh no, that's a space rattlesnake. And they just filmed it through like red, orange, and green filters and maybe put another moon in the sky. And it looked pretty cool for what you could do, for the equivalent budget nowadays. I don't know. It would be a very, very low budget set nowadays. I think it's now, back then they didn't have CGI. It was all practical effects and it very much looked like it. Where they're really shown was dialogue and story, where they're in a spaceship. They're on the front desk, the con of the spaceship, and it's all cardboard or plywood cutouts painted gray with some LEDs hooked up, or probably back then before LEDs, and screens you couldn't see because obviously the technology wasn't that good, and it's like just a bunch of blinking lights. Even made fun of that in an airplane. The sets left a lot to be desired. When the ship took a hit, they had to all pretend to get thrown in a certain direction. It's like nowadays you could put a set on rollers, and then you could just have a bunch of guys just push it, jerk it in one direction. So it's like they all move according to physics. But, they did what they could. Anyway, so it ran for a few years. It made 6 movies. You can watch all 6 to kind of get the vibe of the period. I think the first one was 79. I think Star Wars was 77, Superman was 78, and Star Trek was 79. So in that period, you had a whole bunch of these kind of things. And it ran through 1991. So the movies 1 through 6. Movies 1 and 2 were excellent. And the first one was good. It was a slow burn. But movie 2 was kind of more what you expected in a sci-fi. It was like action adventure type of thing. But they're both really good. And then after that, they're fine. They're just, silly Star Wars. The thing is, the series, like, it never went away. It stayed popular, and they had a bunch of spin-offs, and now they have they're still spinning things off with the guy who starred in the 90s, Picard, and he's about 200 years old, and he's just completely humiliated and insulted in the episode. And then they have a cartoon. Needless to say, it's unwatchable. So putting a hippo in the show doesn't really matter. The people who are watching the show at this point, they just don't care about anything, and they probably have to mix a benzo in whiskey to get through the show, which results in many accidental overdoses, because those are both central nervous system depressants, which you don't combine those two things. But if you're watching Star Trek, the risk is probably worth it. So the show has a small loyal following where they're going to keep watching no matter what. It doesn't matter what you put on the screen. It's like, I don't know if they're really into it, or if it's like a left versus right thing, like the 2015 Star Wars kind of became like an old generation of your dad. The dad's watching the original Star Wars, and then the kids watching the new Star Wars and having to pretend to like it. It's like, yeah, we're all kids once. We all did the same stuff. I mean, the proof's in the pudding is because 2015 Star Wars didn't get a whole lot of people rewatching it, and it didn't sell a lot of toys for some reason. Strange. Usually when people are into the show, the toys sell. The kids, there's a big demand for kids' toys, but apparently not. Anyway, I mean, after The View gets canceled, which I heard that's a rumor, turns out it's true. For some reason, it got low ratings. I thought The View The View always seems to be, like, people are always talking about The View, but it's kind of like, I think it's one of those shows that people talk about it more than they actually watch it. It's the Whoopi Goldberg, Joy Behar type of thing. And they can bring back Whoopi Goldberg to the show. I mean, you might as well. She was on the show in the 90s. That show was the 87 to like 95 or something, which is funny because like it almost overlapped. Now, if I was the original Star Trek guys, I think they made the last movie in 91, I would have just kept going. I don't care how old and fat we are. It's like in 91, you could have kept going for another decade, easy. Just keep making those movies. What's the worst can happen? I mean, you'll keep making those movies. It's like, oh well, yeah, but then the Next Generation and the what was that, the one that spun off after that, the Borg one, I forget what they call it. It's like they'll overlap. It's like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Different generations can go see the old Star Trek, and new generations can see the new one. You can see both. I mean, honestly, you're probably going to see both. It really doesn't matter. Anyway, so the old show. Campy, fun, silly. It was for everyone. The new stuff is blonde man bad, POC woman good, and I only say that because CBS was the company that I think still owns it now, and they've got their own, I don't know, streaming platform, which, like, gee, another streaming platform to pay $14 a month for. There's really only so many platforms to go around per month. You're probably not going to subscribe to more than one or two, and you start looking at like this, all this money adds up. You think like, well, how many shows did you watch? If you've got like Amazon and Netflix, you kind of have your bases covered. I don't even know what they cost, but it's kind of you got to look at it and you're like, oh, so I paid like how many hundreds of dollars, and you just divide it by the shows you watch, and you're like, oh, this is not worth it. And you also have to consider that you can just go, this is digital content. So there's got to be, you can go sailing for it. So there's got to be some kind of customer. You've got to really want to see, either support the shows or support the platform, support in some way. Otherwise, what's to prevent you from going sailing? Kind of nothing. So the new CBS Star Trek had the 2 free episodes on YouTube. I saw the first episode. It was some arrogant blonde man was warned not to do something by a purse puppy. So, of course, he does it anyway because those incompetent Europeans just can't do anything right. And the thing is, anything now, if you see fair skin, it's going to be coded for bad. So, of course, he dies, and the purse puppy has to complete the mission. That kind of stuff is beyond stupid. Maybe in the 80s, if you wanted to kind of switch things up a little bit, it would have been fresh. Seeing it now, it's like, well, that's expected now. Like, I can tell you who the protagonist and antagonist is just by the skin color. It's literally on a spectrum of good to evil, of dark to light. You think about the spaceships and the space race and all this kind of stuff, and if you want to make Russians honorary Europeans, it's like they, who designed the spaceship? Whose names was on the ship, my ninja? Who designed the spaceship? It kind of boggles the imagination. It stretches the willing suspension of disbelief a little bit when suddenly, Europeans just turn, like in every advertisement, they're so incompetent. You're like, something's not adding up here, because in the real world, they're very competent. If you have an organization with a bunch of Europeans in it, you've probably got a pretty good organization on your hands. I mean, they did build Europe, and they built a lot of cool advanced technological stuff. It's kind of weird that commercials and movies have like, oh God, I remember reading sci-fi as a kid, and they've got like Africa and South America are like these leaders of the space program. And I think that was in the Heinlein book that movie Starship Troopers was made on, where there's a bunch of sci-fi where they've done that. It's like suddenly like Africa and South America turn around, they've got these massive space programs, and think like, so this book is set like 200, 300 years in the future. So what happened? It's a whole lot of advancement for like 200 years in the future. You want to explain this like Nigeria's now got a space program and they're like leading the world in tech. It's interesting. Would you like to go into details on that? Nope. That's just the way it is. It's just the future. Well, you can kind of extrapolate from the past, the present, into the future, and I don't really see South America leading a space program so much. Anyway, everything sucks. Anything in the pop culture is, how many times you can make a lot of these videos? Like, you can scroll through Bounty into Comics, and there's no shortage of every new fresh piece of garbage. I get the feeling that shows and movies are just going to get smaller and smaller. Every once in a while, you're going to have that Spider-Man that's going to be $1 billion hit. I think a lot of other stuff is going to be kind of going in the other direction. I can't imagine there's a whole lot of desire for this type of thing. I mean, they're openly saying, like, listen, we're far left whack jobs. Like, this show it's not even for moderate left. It's for far left. Okay, why didn't you... I won't say it. I will say it. I mean, the next step is obviously going to be like BLT stuff with the T and the BLT stuff and everything. It's like, that's kind of... You're gonna. I mean, if you're gonna keep going far left, you might as well just make the next step. You could put that swimmer, that swimmer person, in your show. I mean, if you made him a space alien, I guess it would probably be islamophobic. It's tricky. Headed for interesting days. To the point where I can't imagine why people are into pop culture at all anymore, like Netflix or HBO or Cartoon Network, all this kind of stuff. It's all. I mean, this is like more Weimar than Weimar. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe, see you guys all next episode.